Happy Halloween! Welcome back to my channel where it's Halloween because I say so. I woke up this morning and it was a crisp 68 degrees and I was in the mood to talk about Halloween, so here we are. As you can probably tell by the title, today we are talking about the history of haunted houses and all about them, so strap on in. Fun fact about me, I've actually never been in a haunted house. That's crazy. I make so much horror content, I watch so many scary movies. I just hate the idea of freaks, like, lunging at me, okay? Sue me. In fact, I kind of feel a little bit like a poser for talking about the history of haunted houses and making so much horror content and horror-centric content, knowing that I haven't been in a haunted house. Like, that's like the ultimate poser thing. I managed to somehow live 23 years with never going into one. So, I'm gonna do a little bit of insurance for my channel and for myself. My videos have been flopping lately. No fault of you, okay? I'm not blaming you. It's not your fault that you don't follow me and like all of my videos, I understand. But since I'm on a downslide anyway, I've decided that if this video gets 100 likes, which will not happen, but if this video gets 100 likes, I will find the scariest haunted house in my area within a, 100-mile radius, and I will drive there and record myself going through it, edit the footage, and I don't know. Can I go pee? Okay, there's a very weird thing about driving. Why can't I carry firewood up to my cabin days in advance? Why do I have to go and get it every night? That's crazy. If you're into that kind of thing, you can watch that kind of thing. All right, that's my proposition here. I'm deathly scared of haunted houses. The idea of it freaks me out so badly. I will record myself going through the most intense haunted house experience I can find. And I've already checked, I am not 100 miles within the McCamey Manor. Nice try. Alright, now that my little plugging adventure is over, let's talk about the history of haunted houses. What was the first haunted house? Where did we come up with this idea as a society? Cue this video. Thanks for staying, baby. Means a lot to me. One of the earliest haunted house attractions, and I use that lightly, haunted house attractions, was in the 1800s. You may be familiar with the name Marie Tussaud. That's those famous wax figure houses that you see that you can kind of walk through like a museum where they've got wax figures of celebrities that are sometimes extremely accurate and sometimes not. Marie Tussaud was actually dated back a lot further than you might think, and in the 1800s there was an exhibit called Marie Tussaud's Chamber of Horrors. In case you don't know about the history of Miss Tussaud, she spent her entire better half of her life making death masks of the victims of the French Revolution. So all of those guillotined aristocrats, she was slapping some slip over their face and making little molds. So that's pretty interesting, I actually didn't know that. And by the 1810s, she was touring all over Britain and general Europe with wax replicas of famous murderers, famous murder victims, and famous French Revolution victims. Marie Tussaud would create these exhibitions where she would recreate scenes of people being guillotined and executioned and killed and murdered, and those British Victorian little chaps lined the block, okay? Just to gawk at dead bodies made of wax. Sounds kinda weird, especially because you think about how, like, we have escalated as a society and you wouldn't think that people would be that interested in that kind of thing at the time. It's kind of morbid. But you gotta remember that the Victorians were obsessed with death. These are the people that made the bubonic plague like a style, okay? It was very popular to look sick. Mourning was an event, all right? These people lived for death for some reason. Don't know why. All I do know is that goth baddies everywhere can thank the Victorians. Pay homage to your roots. So this wasn't your typical boo haunted house. This was a death museum, essentially. And people in the 1800s, especially in Europe and Britain, loved the idea of getting to ponder mortality in such a macabre way. By the early 1900s, Marie Tussaud's works were also featured in sideshows, and that's when people started to notice that sideshows were very popular. I did a little video about the history of P.T. Barnum if you want to know about the actual real-life horrors of sideshows, but I will say that people were interested in being scared and spooked and freaked out, and so that kind of escalated from there. So much so that what were called traveling spook shows became very popular in the 1900s. That is also a slur, but in this context it is not, so I want to clarify that I will not be saying it again. The reason I clarify that is in the 1900s that word is also used in a derogatory way. We're not gonna go there, but that's not what we're talking about. These haunt shows became popular in the 19th century and early 20th century. They were vaudeville-style productions mixing stage music, seances, and cheap jump scares. Often associated with a circus-like setting, even at circuses, they would use projection, lighting effects, and other tricks of the light called phantasmagoria, which is such a cool name. I am begging some goth woman out there to name your child Phantasmagoria. Not to the benefit of the child, but to the benefit of me, because I think that would be badass. As we know, in the 19th century, special effects were nothing fancy, so light plus smoke plus scary sounds coming from metal objects equals audiences soiling themselves and convinced there was a ghost in the room. Have you ever been, this is actually my second time in this video talking about Universal Studios, so that's kind of funny, but have you ever been to Universal Studios and experienced Shrek 4D where they're like farting and you they spray water on you, there's smells in the room, the seats are moving, okay? This was ahead of its time, okay? But with a spooky little twist, okay? This was the Shrek 4D meets Ghost Adventures. Now, the haunt shows and Madame Tussauds Chamber of Horrors were the early predecessor to the haunted house. The first true haunted houses where people lined up, went through, there were scare actors, etc., actually started during the Great Depression, you know, when everything started, when we started putting meat in Jell-O, okay? That it was the golden age of what the hell, basically. Okay, maybe I should do a transatlantic accent for this. I'm gonna try.
During the 1930s, community groups invented modern haunted houses as a cheap way to entertain rowdy kids on Halloween. In fact, Halloween mischief was so bad back then, fires, vandalisms, and pranks were rampant. Some cities considered banning Halloween altogether, but there were a few spooky-loving vigilantes that said, no, nay, we shouldn't ban Halloween. It's one of the only joys we have. I mean, I haven't eaten in weeks. And instead, YMCA's, churches, and local gyms started hosting what were called haunted houses for the little future arsonists.
Okay, we're done. We're done with the accent, sorry. If you survived that, W in the chat for you. Over the years through the Great Depression, haunted houses became a way to keep children at bay. Because apparently these little fuckers were just setting things on fire, throwing objects into windows. Trick-or-treating was very serious, and the tricking was the problem. Because haunted houses had to be made cheaply, and they didn't have a lot of money for, you know, Spirit Halloween animatronics, people of small towns began making DIY pamphlets explaining how they created the scares in the other rooms and spreading the knowledge to other parents and youth group leaders in the area so that these haunted houses could be recreated in other towns. Now, here's where it gets weird. These haunted houses weren't your typical blood and gore, some man named Bubba with overalls jumps out with a chainsaw. They were going for more of a 4D sensory experience, okay? We're still on that. And the design choices consisted of hanging fur from the walls in complete darkness and hanging raw liver on the walls. What poor little kid pissed his pants bumping into the meat wall? Is what I want to know. Little Edward Johnson got a little freaked out when he brushed up against that cold, slimy meat wall. The idea is to trick the children into thinking they were touching rotted flesh. So soon other party trick ideas came from that, so they would like put holes and curtains and doors and that you would stick your hands in, and oh, what are you gonna touch? It would be peeled grapes, pasta noodles, and it was just supposed to be slimy and gross. What I will say is in the 1930s, haunted houses mostly consist of loud banging and touching a various array of slimy objects. Hey, sounds like a regular Tuesday night for me. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I don't know where I was going with that. So we have this in writing, and somewhere PTA moms were just smearing liver on walls of churches and community centers for the hell of it. People in the 20s, 30s, and even 40s took Halloween very, very seriously. By the 1950s and 60s, we have what's called the haunted garage, and I am proud to say that where I am in my neck of the woods, the one benefit to living in the Bible Belt is that old traditions die hard, so we still have a couple of haunted garages every year, which is really interesting. The haunted house phenomenon spread to the suburbs, and local families would set up a haunted house scenario in their garage for local kids to walk through. This is also the beginning of capitalism. That's right, this is where the beginning of commercializing haunted houses start. They decided that this was something to capitalize on and commercialize on. Newspaper archives show that there are articles advertising garage houses of horrors where people charged like a dime to enter, whatever. Little kids shuffling through cellophane and fake skeletons and all that oogly boogly nonsense. Parents loved it because it was cheaper than a babysitter. Kids loved it because it was scarier than a youth group sermon. So it was a win-win for everyone. By the 1970s and 80s, everybody knows that the horror movie genre was popping off. And horror wasn't just something that you would go watch to be a little spooked. That's when the full-blown horror fanatics started to come out of the woodwork. Haunted houses weren't just church fundraisers anymore. Professional attractions began charging admission and advertising with horror movie level flair. Some cities tried to regulate them and even banned them. They cited that these major haunted houses in the 70s and 80s were basically giant city fire hazards, safety coding, and who knows what else, okay? This was a time where the scare actors actually grabbed you and drug you around a little bit, okay? We didn't have any of that sissy nonsense where they can't touch you. It's bold of me to say, I've never been in a haunted house, but okay. A popular leadership and civic organization called the Jaycees even started promoting haunted houses and literally began publishing guides for the best haunted houses in the area. They also began promoting their own material on how to recreate their iconic haunted houses, which were called the Jaycees Fear Grounds, and are still active today, by the way. In this pamphlet were things like the Jaycees Haunted House Success Kit, published in 1977, showing other people how to recreate super scary and successful haunted houses. Today's haunted house scene is extremely diverse, and we have only gotten more extreme from our humble beginnings, from Marie Tussauds and sticking your hands in bowls of various kitchen products. From family-friendly corn mazes to theatrical haunts to 4D experiences, we have entire organizations and expos dedicated to the world of haunts. Huge industry, huge. But when I say we have escalated the haunted house experience, I'm not just talking about in production quality. I'm also talking about in other ways that are borderline maybe illegal. To this day, there are extremist operators that kind of started popping up from the 2000s and 2010s that made haunted houses an even scarier experience. With it came controversy and sometimes public outcry for them to close down. One example of these extremely extreme haunted houses is the McCamey Manor in Somerton, Tennessee. Marketed as an extreme haunt, participants historically have signed extremely long waivers, underwent intense, often physically and psychologically invasive scenarios, all headed by the owner of the manor, Mr. McCamey. Now, this guy's like ex-Marine, and one thing is for certain, this is not your traditional haunted house, okay? This is just some guy with a torture fetish who's like going crazy on these people. It's been described by former participants as actual, literal, military-grade torture. And when you sign the waiver to go into the haunted house, you agree to things happening like your hair being cut, your teeth being pulled, your nails being pulled out. So things like that are not cool to me. I wouldn't do that. And it's all volunteer. You don't even pay for this to happen. So makes me think this guy is just a little crazy, obviously. And I think he actually ended up going to jail for it. I don't know. There's a documentary. Watch the documentary. Don't listen to me. We're talking about the history of haunted houses here. So the next time that you're at a big budget haunted house, maybe you're lined up for Halloween Horror Nights, I am jealous of you. I would have loved to go to that this year, and you spent $50 to wet your pants. Just remember that all of this started with liver on the walls and death masks of aristocrats who died in a guillotine incident during the French Revolution. The more you know. Be glad that you're dealing with the spirit Halloween animatronics and laser effects because your grandparents were sliding through some liver-covered walls in a church basement. History is beautiful, don't you think? My name is Melody. This channel's called Melody Ever After. If you are interested in the realm of anything nerdy, freaky, geeky, spooky, maybe check me out. Check out my channel. I've got lots of other videos that you'll probably like if you liked this one. If you didn't like this video, leave me a comment as well, okay? I'm immune to the hate at this point. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until next time.